Today, I want to talk to you about theater, but not just any theater. A physical theater that is like nothing that you have ever seen before. Something that has been able to capture the zeitgeist of the culture for generations. From the aftermath of World War II, when there was an Italian immigrant who fled Nazi Germany, to the 70s and 80s when Americana was all the rage and we wanted that idealized feeling of what America was. To the 90s when counterculture was all the rage and we saw heroes like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson grace our TV screens. To the 2000s that brought us legendary people like Dave Bautista and John Cena. And to today, whenever we enter a brand new era where women are at the forefront. If you haven't been able to pick up on what I'm talking about so far, I am talking about professional wrestling. The pseudo sport that has been around since the early 20th century. The one that started in the carnivals of the strongman competitions and became what it is today. Yes, wrestling is fake. But fake isn't the word that I would use. I would use predetermined because unlike your MMAs or your footballs, you can replicate it again and again and again. And this is why many wrestlers wrestle 250 to 300 days a year in normal times for our entertainment. Now, as I mentioned, this all started at the beginning of the 20th century in the carnivals. But starting about 70 years ago, we had the emergence of something called the National Wrestling Alliance, the NWA. Which written about in Brian Borick's Hooker, talking about the first champion Lou Thesz, the first National Wrestling Alliance champion, that crowned a new era that brought us all the way into the 90s, where World Championship Wrestling, owned by Ted Turner, took the mantle of the NWA and is one that is now being revived today. Now, I mentioned the 60s and the 70s and this hero who fled Nazi Germany. I am talking about Bruno Sammartino, the legendary strongman who was one of the strongest men in the world, who fled the oppression of the Nazis to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and became a star in his own right. Then you have those like Bob Backlund and Hulk Hogan, who were America through and through. These are things that represented the culture at that time. And then the 1990s. Now, they tried, the World Wrestling Federation tried to stay cartoonish and be for kids, but that was not what the 90s was about. The 90s was about jackass and grunge music, and so wrestling followed suit with the beer drinking, flipping off Stone Cold Steve Austin and the pompous Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who has become the top grossing box office movie star in the world today. But it's not all fun and games. Mike Mitka talks about in Steroids and Pro Wrestling about how people abuse their bodies for the entertainment of us. They would do steroids to get muscles. They would get addictions to things like Vicodin and Dosomas because the pain of having to fall over and over and over again, because no matter how many people want to tell you that it's fake, the bumps are real. The falling is real. You cannot fake getting hit with a chair, as Kevin Nash would say. But if I was to just focus on the bad and the drug use and the 2007 Chris Benoit murder, double murder suicide, where he, in a fit of roid rage, killed his wife and children, then I would give you no reason to understand and explain why I am a fan of the pseudo sport of professional wrestling. But whenever I point to one instance that can prove the fact that everyone could and should be a fan of professional wrestling, it comes from an article written by Gino Candela called Occupy Raw that talks about a moment in our culture that was expressed in 2014 when a wrestler named Daniel Bryan, who was not in the cards to be a star, but the crowd got behind him. And people started cheering for him no matter what situation he was put in. They fell in love with him. And because of that, he was able to propel himself to the main event of the biggest show of the year, WrestleMania. All because the crowds cheered for him when the office didn't believe in him. And this is what makes wrestling special, that it is more interactive than anything else that you can see on television today. If I am at a football game and I'm cheering for one team, that doesn't have any determination in the outcome of the game. It's all about the work of the players on that team. But in professional wrestling, things change. And because things change, we are able to cheer for who we want to cheer for and believe in who we want to believe in, the person who most represents who we are as people, if it is who we are or who we want to be, because we wanted to be Hulk Hogan. We wanted to be big and muscly, but we were more like Daniel Bryan. We were more like the lanky 5'8" person who just loved wrestling. And because of that, we were engaged and we felt like we belonged. And this is what I'm informing you about today, this thing that has taken over my life for years and years, my love of professional wrestling. Not because of everything that people have said wrong about it, but because what is right. Because I get to be a part of it. Thank you.